you ever wondered how an entire thriving community just vanishes? I mean, we're not talking about a single person wandering off into the woods here. We're talking about thousands of people, their homes, their entire complex societies, just seemingly wiped off the map overnight. Imagine a bustling town suddenly turning into this empty, silent echo chamber. It's a mystery that spans across continents and centuries, leaving behind all these tantalizing clues, empty streets, and, well, echoes of the past. So today we're going to dive right into this explainer and uncover exactly how and why these communities disappeared.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, the lore of lost cities. Then, Derinkuyu, the underground refuge. After that, Roanoke, the inland survivors. Next up, Kuldara, the cursed ghost town. And finally, echoes of the vanished. Let's get into it.
We're looking at 3 distinct steps or phases today. Step 1 is subterranean survival in Turkey. Step 2 is colonial relocation in North America. And step 3 is a midnight exodus in India. Starting us off with Section 1, Derinkuyu, the underground refuge.
So we're heading over to the Cappadocia region of Turkey, to a place called Derinkuyu. Now, this wasn't a city that crumbled into dust. Actually, it was a bustling, highly organized settlement that existed completely beneath the Earth's surface. Just take a second to imagine the sheer scale of this number, 20,000. We're talking about an intricate, multi-level complex carved straight into soft volcanic rock, going a staggering 85 meters deep into the Earth. Think about what it would smell like, or sound like, or feel like to live that far underground with up to 20,000 people at once, right alongside their livestock and their food stores. It's kind of claustrophobic just thinking about it, right? Imagine the sheer logistical nightmare of an entire town living, breathing, and hiding completely out of sight.
Looking at the timeline, the initial caves were built by the Phrygians way back in the 8th to 7th century BC. Over time, it evolved dramatically. By the 14th century, Christian natives had expanded it into this massive safe haven to hide from Mongolian incursions. It was used heavily for centuries as a refuge until it was finally peacefully abandoned in 1923 during a population exchange between Greece and Turkey. But here is the absolute wildest part of this whole story. History literally just got buried. It sat completely forgotten for decades until 1963, when a local resident unexpectedly rediscovered the massive tunnel network. And why? Simply because he was knocking down a wall in his basement during a home renovation. No way, right? Imagine trying to expand your basement and casually finding a 20,000-person ancient city.
You've really got to understand, this wasn't just some temporary, terrifying hiding spot where people cowered in the dark. Not at all. It was a fully functioning city, uniquely engineered to seal out violent threats from the surface world above. The psychology behind their defense features is just incredible. Picture rolling a massive stone door shut from the inside to completely block out a marauding army. Each floor could be locked off separately to halt invaders right in their tracks. Plus, they engineered this massive 55-meter ventilation shaft that reached the water table, acting as an internal well. They even had subterranean wine presses, oil presses, and chapels, to maintain that vital sense of normalcy and community while essentially being buried alive.
Moving right along to Section 2, Roanoke, the inland survivors.
All right, shifting from the underground sanctuaries of Turkey over to the American coast, we face the legendary historical enigma of the lost colony of Roanoke. Now, the popular narrative you've probably heard is that the 1587 colonists simply vanished into thin air, leaving only the cryptic word Croatoan carved on a post. But the truth is, they left a deliberate, vital breadcrumb. Governor John White recorded that the settlers told him it was their explicit intention to relocate some 50 miles into the mainland after he sailed back to England. This specific clue is exactly what modern researchers are using today to finally start unraveling this centuries-old myth.
In fact, modern First Colony Foundation archaeologists are out there right now, actively screening the soil. They've pinpointed their efforts on a location designated as Site Y in Bertie County right along the Chowan River. They're meticulously hunting for 16th century evidence, essentially digging right where those desperate colonists said they were going to go. And the stakes here are massive. Finding just a single object could solve the greatest disappearing act in American history.
And let me tell you, the physical evidence being pulled straight from the dirt is breathtaking. Experts are out there examining specific Elizabethan sherds. And we're not talking about just any random old pottery here. They found Surrey, Hampshire borderware and German Frechen stonewares.
These specific ceramics were used for food storage and preparation back then. Finding a 16th century food storage jar pulled right out of the North Carolina dirt, that provides incredibly compelling proof of an actual inland Elizabethan habitation exactly where Site Y is located. So the survivors didn't just magically evaporate into the ether. They were starving, cut off from supplies, and likely terrified. So according to the dispersal theory, there wasn't a single large relocation site. To survive food shortages and unknown threats, the colony deliberately broke apart. They shattered their community into smaller settlement groups, spreading around areas like Salmon Creek just to stay alive. And honestly, this makes perfect, desperate sense because it directly parallels a survival tactic they used during a previous food shortage in Roanoke just a year prior in 1586. Basically, they scattered to live. Which brings us to Section 3, Kuldara, the cursed ghost town. We journey now to the arid Thar Desert in Rajasthan, India. Here, we're exploring a stark, haunting contrast between a once prosperous 13th century agricultural hub and its current dusty desolation. We can actually ground the powerful local legend of Kuldhara in documented history. There's this incredibly telling 19th century account from a British officer named James Todd. He describes how this rich community of Paliwal Brahmins, amounting to 5,000 families, by the way, went into voluntary exile. The Paliwals were brilliant farmers who literally made the harsh desert bloom. Yet they fled, leaving all their agricultural mastery behind just to escape a rapacious tyrant prime minister named Salim Singh.
So you have to ask yourself, why did a prosperous, highly functioning village vanish essentially overnight? Try to imagine the sheer panic and desperation it would take for thousands of people to abandon their intricate desert community and their ancestral homes in the dead of night, leaving absolutely everything behind.
When we look at the evidence, we're really balancing cold science with deeply passionate local history. On the clinical, environmental side of things, there's evidence suggesting earthquake damage might have forced relocation, or perhaps a severe, prolonged drought made the arid Thar Desert finally unlivable. But the deeply held local legends point to a much more terrifying human element. We're talking unsustainable, cruel taxes imposed by the prime minister and a horrifying ultimatum driven by Salim Singh's illicit desire for the village chief's daughter. Faced with a monster demanding their total submission, the villagers chose the perilous desert instead. And according to chilling local legend, as the Paliwals fled into the dark in grief and anger, they cast a dark curse on the land. No one will ever be able to reoccupy this village. It's a myth so potent, and the eerie atmosphere of those ruined streets is so heavy, that Kuldara remains a haunting, completely uninhabited ghost town to this very day. Literally, no one lives there. Now for Section 4, Echoes of the Vanished. Let's bring these threads together and truly understand the underlying mechanics of why and how communities abandon their homes. As we've seen, Derinkuyu was emptied peacefully, if tragically, through an organized geopolitical population exchange in 1923. But Kuldara? That was completely different. It was abandoned in a singular, terrified act of defiance, a sudden, desperate nighttime evacuation just to escape human tyranny. It really all comes down to survival strategy. The English colonists in Roanoke chose forced dispersal. They scattered into smaller groups along inland rivers just to survive starvation and unknown threats. Conversely, the Anatolian Christians in Derinkuyu chose deliberate consolidation. They grouped 20,000 people together, deep underground, to survive surface invaders. It's fascinating, right? Opposite strategies used to achieve the exact same desperate goal of human survival. So think about your own neighborhood, your own town right now. If your community was forced to disappear tomorrow, whether by environmental disaster, geopolitical forces, or some sudden crisis, what artifacts would tell your story centuries from now? What mundane, everyday remnants of your life might one day become profound, puzzling clues for future archaeologists trying to understand how you vanished? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.